The truth is very stubborn, eh? So many people don't, I don't know if they don't believe me, but I was actually very shocked at the reaction that people had. I did an interview with CNN, and but the views that I expressed there are the views that I express here at home. So I couldn't understand what was so fascinating. Maybe it was because it was on an international platform. But what I did in the White House is something I'll do here at home. I will say, I actually realized how open our media is here, and we actually need to take more pride in that. We have a good thing going here. We were orderly. I felt like I was in a flea market. I was like, I don't know what the hell is this, but okay, we are here now. And again, understanding the environment that you find yourself in, we understood that the Americans were going to try and have some kind of political theater. Going into it, I was very clear about that. And I was very clear that there is no white genocide. That's a fact. The truth is stubborn. Those are just the simple facts. And that the Oval Office has become a political theater. I don't believe in elevating our domestic contradictions on a global stage. And that's why I didn't have a problem. We can debate certain things here at home, farm murders, we can disagree. But at the core of it, what is the truth? What are the statistics telling us? It's a simple, again, journalism is like that, facts. It's the basics 101. What are the facts telling us? About the demographics who are affected by crime in the country, about farm murders in relation to that. That was just the fact. And what is, and when I say we miss the fundamentals or the basics, we must define what a genocide is, so that we understand whether or not South Africa falls within that category. It's a really simple notion. So I didn't have any kind of internal contradiction or conflict about how to approach that meeting, because it's something that we'd been making noise about even here at home. We dispel, fake news all the time. That is our role. And then again, like I said, understanding that we can't elevate domestic contradictions on a global platform. So, we know what the views of certain political parties are, but what is the definition of South Africa's national interest? And fine, the government of national unity needs to probably, define itself on certain issues. But for now, that moment, and dealing with the turning down of the lights, I must admit, I was worried that I was going to be I was going to get into trouble with South Africans back home, because after I asked Donald Trump, what would it take to convince you that there is no white genocide in South Africa? It's when, of course, he said, turn down the lights, dim the lights, dim the lights. And I said, oh, no, 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 no. It cannot be because of me, because but at the same time, as a journalist, I was like so shocked, because they were talking about golf, and then there was a question from a colleague from Africa about Congo, and I thought, this is not why I came here. So I was like, what is going on? I was genuinely confused and bemused to say, why is anyone, is it me, or something is off here? Why are we not talking about what has been the topic of discussion for the last 4 months? And that's why I had to scream my way through that flea market. So they're very disorganized, but I think it was coordinated chaos that we had to fight through. And it was very important, because there are policy decisions that have been made on the basis of fake news. And that is our job as journalists, to ensure that society is informed well enough so that they make the correct decisions. Whether we talk about, protecting Stats SA, so that policymakers, the ones who actually pay attention to what Stats SA is saying, that they make good policy decisions. That's our job. And if they're not, it's our job to ask the politicians why they're not paying attention to what the research is telling us, which is what they're not doing, Braweli. So I'm going to keep picking on Braweli. But in a way, coming back and then having to fight with Brawili and his friends, they also know deep down what the role of journalism and journalists are. But as Mahlang was saying, they take advantage of sometimes, a journalist is too scared or they're nervous or they're young. They know that they can try bully them around. So it's a two-way street. It's a symbiotic relationship. I don't know if one can ever say they're better than the other. I think the media has done very well to protect the freedoms, media freedom. So for an example, they told us before we entered the White House that they would be the only ones providing the feed and that our live views, which is the units that we use to transmit and broadcast, would not work. So we said, oh, we must only rely on your feed. So I said to a colleague, can you imagine if one of our ministers told us that when we go to the union buildings, we'll only take the feed provided to us by the union buildings? That was the first thing for me, because they can put anything on that feed and we'd have absolutely no control in terms of the angles, in terms of, in terms of when they dip in and out. They had complete control. So that was the first thing. I was like, oh no, we don't have that at home. And if they tried it, there would be a lot of noise around it. That's the first thing. The second thing was, little things like in a media briefing, you just put up your hand and say hi. And then, Brawili will say, okay, you're number one, you're number two. There was none of that there. As you could hear, you're just screaming, Mr. Trump, genocide. So my strategy was, okay, I realized Donald Trump has a short attention span. Just scream out one word, and then he turns. And he turns. So I was like, I have keywords. Genocide, J20. You just had to scream. We don't have that. We're organized here. I'm like, oh, what is this at home? We don't operate like this. So I was a little bit of a snob. I was like, oh no, this is disgusting. Like we are very organized and civilized. That's the second thing. But even in terms of the hostilities, so firstly, they changed the program on the fly. It was supposed to be us being ushered in. The presidents were going to have a tete-a-tete, and then they were going to have that media engagement. So as we're standing near the Rose Garden, so I'm busy looking around. I'm like, oh my God, this is the Rose Garden. Then we're being called in, and the next thing they're sitting there. So they obviously tried to catch us off guard. They wanted to catch the South African delegation off guard and us. And by the time we walked in, there were so many journalists lined up in front. Already, they were given first preference. And only then were we let. So I was pushing and shoving. There was some guy with his lens this big, hey? And I'm like, do you mind putting the camera in front of you so that I can stand next to you? And he looked at me and he was like, looked at me like I'm crazy. I was like, oh, you're probably thinking I'm some crazy African woman. I pushed him. I literally fought. I was literally fighting. So I wasn't fighting with my voice. I was literally fighting physically. And I was like, I'm definitely small. So you walk in, and I tried to stand. Then I was like, there's some tall guy. And I was like, it's not going to make sense. Even if I scream, Trump won't see me. I went around the room where the monitor was. And I was like, there was some lady who was wearing pink who was running the show, hey, and she was not playing. She was very clear about who must stand where and how. And so when I got there, she was like, no, you can't stand there. So I was like, screw this. I'm going to go back to my original position. And then I stood with, South African government official. I stood with Ati. She films for the president. I stood with some colleagues from GCIS and the MLO patients from the, she's an MLO in the presidency. So in that moment, we had to have each other's backs. So one is like, let my foot in, and you squish here, and you have your hand up there. I mean, Dimakatso had her camera over my head. One is leaning on my shoulder. We were literally fighting. And at some stage, some tall man, I don't know who he is, he said, you just stop it now. I looked at him and I said, I will do absolutely no such thing. Eventually, Ati and I made it to the front though, so we won. And then when Ati, she was standing behind one of the officials, the one who was sitting next to John, that lady wearing pink was like, she must move back. She was trying to move her back. She wasn't even that close. But they were very clear about not having anyone from South Africa visible and standing in front. So that's how they operate in their space. And they clearly make sure that they put all their people in front, and so that they have a bite at asking questions towards Trump. So it was quite the experience. I mean, most of us came back with bruises because we were pushing and shoving, and it really got tense at some stage. And I think eventually, and I think they assessed the mood of Trump when Trump was speaking to the golfers and he was a bit more relaxed and he was listening. Then there was sort of, an easing of the mood somewhat, and letting us also have our space. I mean, if you remember, Titi was saying, "Let my president speak," somewhere in the background. It really got that wild, and we don't do that here. We respect each other, even when we're fighting, even with government. We respect each other as colleagues. There is still a lot of respect as well between officials and journalists. Yes, the relationship gets tense to a certain point, but we understand the rules of engagement to a large degree, which is something that I didn't experience that side.